Good morning, afternoon, whatever time it is in your world when you're watching this. Welcome to this month's presentation from the Northwest Intentional Communities Association. We are a nonprofit dedicated to helping people find connecting people and community in the Pacific Northwest region. And this morning we are joined by CynthiaTina from the East Coast. Cynthia is a community matchmaker. She also does ecovillage tours, which I will be attending the first one up in July. So I'm really excited. If you want to talk about that and your whole story and what you do, and I guess we'll have questions later, so you can ask them throughout or save them. But I will hand it over to you, Cynthia, for a presentation, and we'll go from there.
All right, sounds good. Hi,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks for joining me on a Saturday morning. I'm imagining most of you are on the West Coast, so appreciate you getting up with me. As Sarah mentioned, I'm over here on the East Coast, so it's about noon here. And yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting me to present here. I was really excited when I saw your message come through and you were sharing with me a little bit how NICA is growing and you're doing these online events now and really building up the energy. So that's fantastic. I know that takes a lot of volunteer work. So just a lot of appreciation for you and everyone else who's involved in stewarding NICA. Yeah, so I have a presentation I can share with you. I'm happy to introduce myself a little bit more, share about my work, share some of the, nuggets of information and resources I've picked up along the way in terms of how one goes about a intentional community journey, a journey towards living in community, whether that looks like joining an existing community or starting a new community or maybe a combination of the two, maybe just staying where you are and fostering more community wherever you happen to live. But before we do that, I'd love to get a little sense of who's in the room because I'm new to this group and I have no idea what called you to be here today. And that would be very helpful for me. So during my presentation, I can make sure I'm meeting your needs. And then after the presentation, we'll of course have time for Q&A and just open discussion. I'm imagining that the facilitated portion will go for about an hour, but Sarah and I were also speaking that we can leave the Zoom room open even after I leave for those of you who want to network with each other. Because I think these online events are great for learning from like the presenter, me, but also an opportunity for all of you to connect a bit and form some relationships, build community. So with that, I'll invite whoever would like to go first to maybe give me a little wave. If you could share your name, where you're calling from, and what's going on with your community journey. Just really briefly, what brings you to the session here today? You're looking for a community to join, you want to start one, you're just curious to get more information in general. Okay. Okay, Norm, thank you.
Uh,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm Norm Frampton. I'm actually a member of Sunnyside Village, which is a co-housing community in Marysville, Washington. And I'm a member of the marketing team there. So intentional community is such a large group. It's really when we talk to folks that might want to join Sunnyside, it's also good to know what else is out there if we're not like a good fit, that we might give them some direction. So when I saw this from NICA, I thought, well, this would be great to attend.
Oh, great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Norm. So yeah, you already live in a community, but if you have inquiries from somebody, it's not quite a fit, what are some other options? Where do you point that person? Great. Thank you. Okay, Eden?
It's Edan.
Edan? Great.
Yeah, and I joined the NICA Northwest Intentional Communities Association board just over a year ago, same time as Sarah, and I currently live just north of Seattle in Edmonds. And earlier in my life, I lived in intentional community in the first 3 years of my son's life, raised him in it, and I've been more recently ambivalent about whether and how to enter back into intentional community. So I'm looking forward to this to see what you might have to offer to help to find the right fit. I have one community that I'm exploring right now, and trying to make sure that it is going to be a good fit. Thank you.
Okay. Which community is that, if you don't mind my asking?
It's on Bainbridge Island. It's called the Sacred Groves.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. So looking to figure out how do you find a community fit? Nice.
Exactly. Barbara Bartolotti. I'm in Queen Anne, which is in Seattle, and I have been exploring for a couple of years. So just piggybacking onto probably most people here, just exploring and appreciate you being here to present. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you as well.
Yeah, and I'm Lorna Lyons, and I actually was on the board with Idan and Sarah for quite a while with NICA, and I'm still not in community and still sort of kind of really what Idan said about some level of ambivalence. And that what brought me here was actually just the opportunity for you to have framed out what kinds of considerations. It's sort of like, I felt like this would be a useful way for me to get back into thinking about what are the categories and how do I prioritize those categories? Which ones are most important to me? And so that felt like it would just really stir my thinking to determine whether this is still an avenue I want to travel down.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And yes, we will cover all those things. Okay. All right, well, good. Oh, and thank you for putting in the chat as well. Sungam from Boise, Idaho. Thank you. Oh, Robin? Okay, we'll go for you, and then I want to get into it. Go ahead.
I am Robin Freeman. I live on Orcas Island in a community land trust. I've lived in the community land trust for 30 years and seen a lot of change in our larger community, so that the community land trust serves a purpose in terms of affordability, but the larger community is changing so much. So my main interest right now in exploring other communities has to do with affordability. And I've looked at a lot of different co-housing and things like that. And it's just, at least in Washington state, it's not affordable, particularly if you're coming from a land trust. That's the downside of a land trust, because it's affordable in perpetuity. So you don't really leave with much. And I'm wanting to, I guess to me, it's a social justice issue, but anyhow, that's my interest.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Robin, for bringing up the affordability piece. I know that's big on the minds of many people who are creating communities and like, oh my gosh, how do we make this affordable? And then people who are looking for community and they're like, I can't afford that. So yeah, and that's all nested within the larger housing crisis we have in the United States. So I'll touch on that a little bit during my presentation, or at least I'll point you towards some of the resources that I have for you to go deeper. Tom, did I see a little wave? Are you good?
Yeah, that's me. I live out by SeaTac Airport, just south of Seattle, and I've been looking at intentional communities or co-housing options also for several years, and I can pretty much echo what the last two speakers said in terms of my impetus and also the affordability question. So if you can address that a little bit, that would be great. And I'm not wedded to living in the Pacific Northwest, although I do really like the environment out here. But I find in my limited research so far that it's pretty much expensive around the country, really, to join an already established group. It's a different question, I guess, if you're trying to start your own.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and Neil, I'll give you an opportunity to share as well if you want, because you're
I'll
also
type.
you.
I'll type. I'll type.
Okay, okay. Oh yeah,
Thank you.
you put it in. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'll let you carry on. Thank you, though.
Okay. Well, and I'll just mention for the whole group, read what Neil has put in the chat because he's also a great resource for you and somebody who's very well steeped in the communities movement and holds a lot of roles in it. Okay. All right. Whew. So let me just get my presentation over here. Let's see. All right. Can you see that okay? All right. Very good. So, yeah, I'll just start by sharing briefly a bit more about my journey. I live in community. I talk about community. I teach about community. I help groups come visit communities. I've been very fortunate in my life to have traveled around the world at this point, visiting close to 200 different intentional communities, be that proper co-housing projects or permaculture centers, eco-villages, tiny house villages, a whole mix of places, and including some longer stints in a few communities. And through so much travel, I not only got to see a diversity of places, but also get to be part of some of the wonderful organizations that are helping to steward and uplift the communities movement, including the Global Ecovillage Network, the Foundation for Intentional Community. Those are some of the organizations I've gotten to be a part of and still collaborate with quite deeply. And about 5 years ago, I joined the community where I now live called Headwaters Eco Village in Vermont. And I went through my own community search process to settle on this community. I had a lot going for me already because I had visited so many places and this was my work. But still, I had, a little bit of a list of what I wanted, and Headwaters really checked off a lot of the boxes for me. Close to where my family is, in a state that I love. We are a very unique community in that when you join, you actually buy a piece of land and you build your own house. So everyone who lives in the community has built their house here. And that was very much a lifelong dream to build my house, and I'm living in it right now, and I'll show you some photos in a moment. And our community is on 15 acres. We are 8 households. We have a portion of the land that is technically a homeowners association where our homes are clustered. And then what you're looking at in this photo is the common land where we have a big garden and a pond and a sauna, 2 greenhouses. Growing food is a huge part of our community. It really is what brings us together, in addition to all the kids that we have in our community. So we're committed to creating a good environment for them to grow up in. So yeah, here's just some more photos of the gardens, community activities, games that we play together. We have all these cool natural buildings and yurt structures on the land that the residents have built. So we've all gone through this initiatory process, if you will, of building your own home. So that enables us to do a lot of tool sharing, resource sharing. We have very snowy winters. We're just coming out of winter and into mud season here in Vermont. So snow plowing, garden expenses, infrastructure, these are really practical bonding things that unite our community. This is a photo of my house. I kind of get a more recent photo because it looks a little different now, but it is a hybrid of conventional and natural building. I've been building it with my dad and my neighbors, and as well as lots of friends and family members. This is actually a photo of a neighboring intentional community in Vermont that came one day to do a work exchange party and help me fill the interior of my walls that's filled with what's called slip and ship, a mixture of wood chips and clay. And these are photos that I took this morning because actually my dad is over today, and all morning we've been working on my bathroom. The bathroom is plastered with a natural lime and clay plaster with a lime wash on top. So it's really bright color, and you can see the bottles that I've inlaid into the walls. And this is the tub. So slowly, 5 years in, and I'm finally working on my bathroom, you know, with all the travel and the other work I do full time. It's been a labor of love, and I'm so grateful to get to live in a house that I built. So that's a little bit about myself. And as I mentioned, I am really focused on supporting this movement of intentional communities, which I see with a broad definition. So here's, you know, this official definition from the Foundation for Intentional Community. When we talk about intentional community, we're speaking about a group of people who have chosen to live together or regularly share facilities on the basis of explicit common values. So whenever you are thinking of starting a community or looking for a community to join, you want to find out what are those common values. What's the mission statement, the vision statement? What's binding people in a deeper way than just, let's say, a retirement community somewhere where maybe they have a list of values, but they're not really lived, they're not embedded into the daily life of the community. So that's good to focus on. And of course, you can have online communities, but what we're talking about here is place-based communities, communities where people live together or near each other. And they come in many forms. These are some of the words, some of the terminologies. We've spoken a little bit about co-housing already. Okay, co-housing, that's actually not people sharing a house together. That's kind of what people think of when they hear the term co-housing. But co-housing is actually a development model of privately owned homes with access to shared facilities. Ecovillage, maybe you've heard of that term, you know, alluding to a community that's striving towards sustainability. We've heard also about community land trusts. Robin mentioned that she lives in a community land trust, and that's a particular form. It's actually a nonprofit legal structure that is geared towards creating affordable communities. So all of these terms are helpful when you're on the search for community because you can pick out, oh, that community calls itself a co-housing. Well, I kind of have a vague idea of what a co-housing means. Or that community calls itself income sharing or a senior community. These are kind of like pointers towards what category or legal structure this community might have, what their mission might be. And there's a lot more that could be said about each of them. I do have a blog where one of my articles goes through actually 15 of the most common types of intentional communities with a full definition and some examples. So I think I'm going to have that in the presentation later, but I'll be sure to put that in the chat for you because I know one of you had mentioned about, yeah, what are the categories of communities? Well, here are some of the more common ones. Oh yeah, and I also have this fun little quiz. So this is just a quiz that'll point you towards 5 of the more common types, but it's a nice way where you can just like take 2 minutes and answer some questions and then get a sense of which direction you might want to go. So if you want to take the quiz, you're welcome to do so. And for those of you who, I think, at Sunnyside Village, you had mentioned, well, maybe if I encounter somebody who's not a fit for my community, where do I point them? You could point them towards the Community Finders website, maybe the quiz, maybe some of the other blog articles, just more resources to get people started in exploring what else might be out there. Okay. So, oh yeah, here's the website. So Community Finders is an organization that I started so that I could dive more deeply into creating resources for people. This is a lot of where I do my community matchmaking, which is another service that I offer, really sitting down with folks and figuring out what they want in community, what their values are, their vision. And I then provide a list of communities that match what they're looking for. So you can learn more about that on the Community Finders website. And yeah, let me see what else I have here. I'm just going to go through a few more slides, and then I want to take a pause, and I want to give you some of these links. So a big question that we haven't really touched on so far in the presentation is like, why intentional community? Why live in them? You all gave your answers for why you're here today, but we didn't get into so much of the deeper why. And there's a lot that could be said here. A lot of it depends on your life circumstances and the societal issues, the personal issues, the challenges that you're facing that are bringing you towards, community could be an answer. Because I'm seeing the more I do this work, the more I see it as an answer to more and more challenges on the macro and micro level. I don't need to tell you that we have a loneliness crisis right now, even before COVID, but it's just gotten worse. I should have written it down, but I was listening to a podcast last night with a sociologist who was speaking about how 100 years ago, it was, a very small percentage of people who lived alone. And today, it's the majority of people in Western industrialized countries who live alone. And not that that's a bad thing, but if you live alone and you feel lonely, if you're not getting those, wonderful mental health benefits that come from interaction with your neighbors and people in your immediate surrounding, that can really have a negative impact on your well-being. And then if you think about that in the bigger sense of society, what does that mean if we don't have close connections with our neighbors? If we're maybe, attacking each other on social media, if we're creating more of this divisiveness and separation. And then taking that a step further, if we're not only disconnected from each other, but from the places where we live, and we can't see the impacts of how we live on the environment, on the water, in the air, the food that we eat. So I really see intentional communities as a way to bring back the conscious intention to be connected with place and with each other. These are some of the common reasons that people give for why they decide to live in community. And maybe you resonate with some of them. Wanting more connection, sharing more resources. Why do we all need to own our own laundry machine or lawnmower? Or, what about, each having our own childcare person for each child? Like, why can't we do more of these things as a village? And thereby have more resiliency, more support, more collaboration, but also more joy, more opportunities to experiment with new ways of relating and connecting and going deeper, being more authentic. This is a photo of some of the games we play at our community. That's me with some of the kiddos. All right, well, the good news is that there are thousands of existing communities. There are so many communities already out there that are looking for new members. It's just a matter of researching, reaching out, visiting them. In my work at Community Finders, I go through with people this community search process, which I'm not going to go into too deeply here today, but I just want to give you a visual of it. If you want to take a screenshot, feel free. It's sort of like what you could imagine. You know, first you get clear. What is your vision? What do I want? Spend some time sitting down with yourself with a notebook and making a list. I have this community wish list worksheet that I'm going to give to you. And that can be a helpful tool if you want to fill that out to just start to get a little more clear about your community vision. From there, doing research to discover what is out there. Yeah, I have, like I mentioned, this blog article with the 15 types of communities. There's also many, many online directories for there's a whole directory just for tiny house village communities. There's a whole directory just for co-housing communities if you want to really own your home when you live in community. There's a whole diversity of research tools. And then preparing yourself, doing more events like this, building up that community resume, if you want to think of it that way. How can I not only get what I want from community, but how can I give to community in a meaningful way so that I can be a contributing member with my skills and my talents, my resources. And then, of course, visiting communities. And that's absolutely the fun part. It's an essential part of the process. You can't be on a community search for very long just online. You got to get your feet on the ground. You got to shake some hands, meet some people. And then lastly, after you visited a few communities, evaluating. Okay, is there a community that I want to take the next step in their membership process? Is there, nothing out there that really matches what I'm looking for? And so I feel like I gotta start a community. I'm going to tell you right now, it's way easier to find a community than to start one. So if you do happen to find a community out there that maybe it's not a perfect fit, but maybe you can use some of your founder energy to bring to the community elements that it might be missing, that's much easier than starting something from scratch. But at the same time, we need more communities, of course, in the world. So I don't want to discourage you too much. And yeah, and then I think I'll just share a little bit more about my other organization here, because this ties into visiting communities. Because I've seen, as somebody who herself has visited many communities around the world, I know how difficult it can be to take that step of looking at a community's website, to contacting them, arranging a visit. That can feel like a lot, especially if it's in a location that's different than where you live now. Or maybe if you're early in your journey and you just want to go out and explore and have a transformative experience, learn more about what exists, meet some people, have some connection in your life more immediately. That's why I created ecovillage tours. We offer small group travel experiences to ecovillages and other forms of intentional communities. And we do have some trips coming up this summer. Thus far, we've done over 10 group trips to communities really around the world. Over the winter, we were in Costa Rica, India, Hawaii. And coming up this summer, we have trips in France, Portugal, and where I live in Vermont. So if you come on the Vermont trip, you'll get to meet me. You'll get to see the house that you just saw photos of as well. And actually tomorrow is the end of our early bird sale for all of these summer tours. So it's kind of good timing that we're doing the presentation now. If you're thinking of joining us, I'd like to give you an additional $200 off any of the summer tours. And NICA is the discount code for that. So yeah, I think that's most of what I want to share with you. I have like a second part of the presentation where I go through a virtual tour of many different types of communities, but I've been talking for a long time, so I'm gonna stop my screen share. I'm gonna put this community wish list document into the chat. So let me, just a second, let me make sure that that's accessible. So this is the community wish list. It's a Google Doc. You can make a copy if you want to edit it. There we go. So if you want to open that link now and just have it saved for after this meeting is done. And as I mentioned, this wish list will help you with the prioritization process, help you figure out what it is you want in your ideal community. And it's good to do whether you're thinking of joining or even starting a community. Okay, I'm going to pause now. Are there any thoughts or burning questions before we keep going? I know it was a lot of information too, so.
I'll just say real quick, Cynthia, that I think I pretty much caught up with you on all the links, so you don't have to mess with that later.
Thank you, Neil. Eric?
Yeah, I had a quick question. I mean, kind of largely around like the co-housing structures, or similar ones where there's like shared ownership. And I'm just curious if you could say a little bit about or point me or point the group to resources about like financing models for like how that kind of stuff typically works. Um, I mean, or maybe even just talk about your own experience, right? Did an individual just outright buy all of the land, and then how does that ownership structure work when, others get involved? And I'm assuming it's not just like a typical mortgage, or maybe it is. Yeah, I guess that's the kind of question.
Yeah, great. So are you asking about financing options when developing a community or when you, let's say, might be looking to buy into a community?
Yeah, I think I would probably say like more of the latter. Yeah, of just like kind of structures that you've seen that are typical for like the co-housing model, for example.
Mhm. Yeah, great. Yeah, and this ties into the affordability question as well. So yeah, I have a slide that'll answer this, and I'll just share for myself about my story in my community. And it's good because my story in my community is just one example of how it could look. And there's a whole diversity of legal structures, financing models, and more creative ones that are coming up every day. But in my community, our story, the community started about 16 years ago. So I'm one of the newer residents. This community has been around for a while. And when it started, our founder, she had some inheritance from her mother passing away, and she was able to purchase this land outright. And it was just raw land, no houses on it at all. Fortunately, she had a background as a city planner, so she was pretty good with bureaucracy and was able to, work with the local zoning commission and our city, well, we live in a little village, so it's really more of a town, planning board, and was able to get approval for this community to be created. And so she, I believe up front, she financed a lot of it to put in the initial roads, infrastructure, sewage, all of those basic things to then be able to sell the lots. We call them home sites. And that's where she recouped on that. And with time, she shifted the land ownership structure from her owning it into a community structure, which was initially a corporate structure, and we're now at the phase of looking at shifting that again into more of a nonprofit structure. Unfortunately, we had some conflict with her as the founder, very typical community story, and she did end up leaving. We're still on good terms, but it was no longer the right fit. And so that's how this community came to be. People buy the home sites and then build their house. We are now full, so unless we were to acquire more land, we're kind of set as we are as a community. So at this point, our financial model is just the membership dues, which are around $150 a month. and that goes towards our shared living expenses. Yeah, pretty low membership dues as they go in community, but we're living in a rural area and we do a lot of the maintenance work ourselves. And I will add, building a house is very expensive, even if you do it yourself and with your neighbors. So we have created some systems of support for new members coming in. And a lot of it is built around relationships and trust building. So for example, the community members, the new family who most recently joined, they didn't have a lot of money. They had 2-year-olds, twin girls, and they needed to build a house, put a roof over their heads. So some of the members of our community with more means were able to give them friendly loans to be able to get started. It's a lot of that. I mean, that's only possible when you live in a community of deep trust and relationship building. So that's our story. I'm going to share my screen, and this might be helpful for you. I actually have a little online course about money and community, and this comes from that online course. Let me see if I can make it bigger. It's a chart I created to sort of show the spectrum of prices that you'd be looking at when you join into a community. And it's a multi-layered question. Not only the type of community do you need to consider, but also, and by type of community, I mean its mission, its orientation, its culture, but also the legal structure that underpins that community, as well as your role within the community. Are you going to be a homeowner? Are you going to be a renter? Are you going to be an employee of the community and actually create value through living there? So over here at the far side on the left of your screen is co-housing communities. And I do put them over here because it tends to be, they are the more expensive type of community. And by expensive, I mean really just mainstream normal market rate housing prices, sometimes a little higher because you're getting so much more for your dollar. It's not just buying a house on a neighborhood block. You're also buying maybe a shared kitchen, play space for the kids, swimming pool. It could be a whole number of things. And within co-housing, the movement is having a real moment of coming up with strategies to help to lower costs, maybe not for all, but for some of the units within a co-housing. So even sometimes for those of you who are researching co-housings in your area, don't stop at the sticker price. Still get in touch with the community, find out if they're looking at rental, if they're looking at maybe having multiple people purchase a unit together and they facilitate some of the connections to make that possible. Maybe they have some nonprofit funding that they're able to subsidize the housing costs. Maybe they are accepting of federal grants that you might apply for on your own. There's so many things that could help with this side of the chart. But from there, tends to be urban communities. It's going to be more expensive than rural. The HOA structure, again, that's a home ownership structure. So you're buying a home, and we live in a society where the speculative real estate market is just pushing those prices up and up. The size of the home, of course, tiny home gets less expensive. And then over here in the middle, that's where we come into more of the, I'll call them nonprofit legal structures, of which CLT, that stands for Community Land Trust. That's one type of a nonprofit structure, where actually in a community land trust, it is the trust, the board, if you will, that's made up of members who live in the community usually, and they own the land on which the buildings sit. So often when you're looking at a community land trust, you don't buy your dwelling, you purchase a 99-year lease to that dwelling that sits on land that's owned by the trust. So I think, yeah, I forget now who it was at the beginning who said, you know, it's great when you join a community land trust, but it's not a way to build wealth. And in the world we live in, real estate is how you build wealth. And so it can be tricky. You know, it's a great model, but then what happens after you leave the community? You know, there's no perfect solution here with any of this. It's really an exploration, and there are trade-offs, I think, with all of these options. But just continuing on, I will mention over here, we do have some income sharing communities in the United States, probably around a dozen, maybe, that are full or partially income sharing. You could think of Twin Oaks Community in Virginia. That's one of the largest, oldest, and most well-known. They have multiple businesses in the community that, you know, fully subsidize the costs of people living there. So this is a community you can join for free as long as you're able to contribute your labor towards the development of the community. And a lot of communities do have some type of business, maybe it's education or a retreat center, ways that through work trade or being an employee, you can come up with a creative solution to joining and living there and working there. But most intentional communities don't have that kind of business aspect to them. It's more of a what you would imagine a typical neighborhood residential situation. Okay, I'll pause. Any questions about the chart, what you're seeing here? Or thoughts you want to share, things you see as missing, things I haven't touched on?
I just put this in the chat, but I just thought I could mention that there's a group within NICA that are working on researching and more standardizing income sharing communities and how it would work, at least here. So if you're interested in learning and researching, please reach out to NICA or Sky Blue, which you all know, maybe Sky.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I guess one other piece I could add, sometimes when looking at the prices of some of these communities, you have to remember that your life and lifestyle might look a lot different when you join community versus when you're living on your own. A lot of your normal expenses might go down. Maybe you don't need to own a car when you live in community because the community has a car sharing program or is close enough to town. Maybe you don't need to put as much into childcare because, you know, you have babysitters in the village that you could work with. You know, there's a whole variety. Maybe you can downsize. You don't need a big kitchen with all the bells and whistles because you have a community kitchen. Maybe you're growing a lot more of your own food when you live in community versus then when you live alone. Depends what kind of community you're going after, but those are some thoughts. Any other thoughts or questions? Can be something on a different topic too, if you have something burning. Shelley? Oh. Are you trying to unmute? Maybe Sarah, you could help with that.
Yeah, I clicked ask to unmute.
Very good. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Oh,
I was waving around looking to change my screen, but yeah, so you know, I've been thinking about, and you know, I've lived a little bit in an eco-village, and you know, I'm a co-member of a, you know, co-housing arrangement here, but I was thinking, you know, in terms of folks really getting along with one another and coordinating with one another and, you know, doing more than simply living with one another. I call it the third thing. One of my ideas is, you know, having like a community kitchen, not for a business, not to make money, not to, even supplement income, but as a way for, a small community to give back to the larger community, and as a way to organize folks' efforts and relationships, above and beyond simply getting along with one another. I'll stop there, but I live in the Willamette Valley, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots of food growing here, but there's no way to really, can it, save it, prepare it. So I think a community kitchen that the folks in the co-housing group work with would be, a way to use labor as a way to enhance community, not as a way to make money necessarily.
Yeah, great.
Well, but I appreciate, thank you for, your attention.
Yeah. So you mean when you say community kitchen, you mean creating a kitchen that would be also open to the public as a service to provide food. Yeah, I love that.
Right. Or to help people simply prep their own food and create community themselves, even though they're not, let's say, living in the co-housing group, but as a way to be with their neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And that's something I didn't touch on, but is so cool about living in intentional community is that these places can be vehicles to support community in the broader area.
Yeah.
Not only like these bubbles or, oh, some people get to be in and some people aren't in, but no, how can they be positive forces of change to do good work, service projects, activism, all kinds of stuff in the broader region.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Robin?
I'm just curious if you've ever come across the Montessori model of community in your search.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with Montessori schools. Is that what you mean? Or something different?
Yeah, and I had gone to I'm a Montessori teacher, but I had gone to a conference and I lost track of what's happening with this movement. But I think it was in Texas, there was a Montessori model community that was basically birth cradle to grave. So it was a community of, and it was for lower income individuals, families, and it provided on-site health care, so prenatal care. And then there was a school, and then the people who were older in the community helped with this school. So it was this, anyhow, it just sounded really wonderful, and I haven't been able to re-find it. And I was just wondering if you had.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a number of projects. If it was something in Texas, the only school intentional community I'm aware of in Texas is actually one that I have gotten to visit. It's called Greenbrier. And it is a school where it's loosely based off of Montessori and Waldorf and other things. I'll put the link in the chat. And they do have the residents who live there help participate in the school. Yeah, so it might be that. It could be some other things too. It could be, there are other intentional communities that have. But like I'm thinking of the farm in Tennessee, they have a birthing center, a natural birthing center, and then, and then other, they have a beautiful, green burial site in the community of the residents. So that's really, cradle to grave. But yeah, neat.
Okay.
Yeah, let me know if you find it. Let me know.
Okay.
Good. And Sarah, were you going to say something earlier? I think I saw you unmute.
I'm just stoked at all the people's comments. I mean, you said earlier, like the more you do this work, the more you're convinced that it's the solution to so many social issues. And I just feel that just in this little chunk of time that like, oh, these visions and ideas and holistic ways of piecemealing issues together are not just in my brain. Other people see them too. There's a shared vision here, and I'm just being reminded of that. So I'll say that. But my own curiosity and question for you is the service where you match people. How long does that take? I mean, I'm sure it's dependent on the person and like, what's the longest you've worked with somebody for that fee? Or yeah, do you want to speak to that process maybe?
Sure.
And do you work with people everywhere? I mean, I guess like remotely and other places. Yeah.
Yeah.
How you do it?
Yeah. Oh man. So I at this point have worked with almost 400 clients. I've been doing the community matchmaking for a little over 6 years, and I have gotten to speak with people from all around the world, all kinds of backgrounds. I mean, yeah, it's really an incredible diversity of people that are looking for community. And I think it's been a real gift for me personally to get to spend time with folks from different corners of the globe. So it's not primarily what I'm doing is providing some pointers of directions that people can pursue. And so the framework is when somebody wants to do a matchmaking with me, they fill out an intake form where I have some questions in there, similar to the community wish list, helping them identify what's important to them. And then we have an hour-long conversation where I go much deeper and really help to refine the vision. And I use that as my basis so that when I then refer to a directory I've cultivated of almost 500 communities, these are communities that I've recommended to clients in the past. I've visited a lot of them, but I also like work with them, or I've done events with them, or I know people who live there. So I'm vetting them a little bit. And within that directory, then I'll highlight the ones that I think would be a match based on what they've shared with me. And from there, it's a matter of supporting the person in doing their own further research, contacting the places and going to visit. And for that piece, we have now a group program where we meet weekly, the Community Finders Circle, and we're able as a group to support each other on the journey towards community, because it can take 6 months or 2 years or 5 years. I'm amazed. Like I'll have people writing to me that I've had sessions with them years ago, and they're like, I finally was able to visit this place and I'm joining and thank you so much. I'm like, whew, that was a long, long time. So, a lot of folks who I work with are like community curious. They may not be ready to like go right away into a community project. Some are like on a deadline, and I'm like, maybe you want to slow it down and build relationships. So it just depends.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Oh, cool. There's some, I thank you, Neil, putting in some Montessori schools in Texas. Great. Yeah. Yeah, and that's all you can learn all about here. I'll put the Community Finders website here. I have and also just join the group. You don't need to have a session with me necessarily. And it's a great way, like on a weekly basis, to keep going on your journey, keep learning, keep doing something. All right. Well, any last things before we begin to wrap up?
Well, I really appreciate the resources. I was wondering if you might have some, I don't know, maybe anecdotes or what are there commonalities that you have encountered amongst people searching for community that found can be helpful for those of us who are in that process to know? And I don't know if this is a fair analogy, but like thinking of it similar to like dating, like where people can get hung up on like finding, like having all the things on your list, if you will, like there's trade-offs and like are there pitfalls to be aware of, things like that?
Yeah, great. Yeah, you said it. I mean, dating is an excellent analogy to the community search process. Um, you could think of it as different stages. Like maybe initially when you're starting your journey, you're just coming up with your profile that you could put on the dating app. Like you're figuring out, okay, who am I? What do I want in community? What do I have to offer? And then you're doing a little looking around and seeing, okay, which ones could be a fit. And then really when it gets real is when you go on the first date and when you actually go visit. A lot of communities now are actually offering online virtual tours or meet and greets or coffee hours. So you don't necessarily need to go drive or get on a plane. It could be something virtual to start with, maybe even a phone call with a representative at the community. And that's kind of like your first, like, ooh, could this be something? Could it be a fit? And maybe you want to do that with several communities. I really do encourage, don't do your online research. Find this is the perfect one for me and this is the only one I'm going to look at. But no, do 3 at least. Even if one of them you're like, I don't really like it so much, but it's nearby. I could go visit on a weekend, and that's easy because what you want to do at the early stages is really build up your familiarity with communities. You want to learn more about what you like, what you don't like, and you want to start building up, yeah, like your cultural sense, if you will, for this way of life. Because communities want people with community experience. So the more that you can do to visit, do workshops, events like this, the more that's going to help strengthen your resume. Because the reality is, a lot of these more popular communities, they have waiting lists. You might be looking at waiting for somebody to move out, waiting for them to have some turnover. And when that happens, a lot of these established communities, they don't put it on the real estate market. They don't even send it out to their whole newsletter. They're like, oh, we have a housing open up and we met this guy last week. He seems like a great fit. Let's go tell him that this is an opening. So the more that you can be proactive about building a relationship, even with a community that's already full. I also have some clients who, if they're really excited about a place, they'll actually even move to the area. They won't join, but they'll move nearby and start building up relationships. Some communities even have a formal status for that, which is called an associate member of somebody who lives in the wider region. So from that stage of courtship, then things get more serious. And that's where you really want to make sure for your own sense of well-being that you're really reading all the legal documents. Everything's very transparent, how you join, how you leave, how inheritance works. How does maybe end of life things work in that community, and really make sure that you're clear going in. And any established community, any community that I would recommend would probably have those things in place. And it's not only like this one-way street, it's a two-way street. So you're vetting the community is vetting you. And they might be saying, oh, is this person who we want? Is this going to be a good fit? And I do have a list of questions in my blog of good questions to ask when you're visiting a community to help get a sense for how do they handle conflict? How do they make decisions? Are people really happy living here? So I have some questions that you can ask your visitor person when you're getting a tour. And hopefully you get to speak with more than just the visiting coordinator. You get to speak with other residents who live there. And I would encourage, initially doing a relatively short visit to multiple communities. Remember, you can always go back for a longer visit at some communities that you like, or more frequent visits. And it really is that deepening of relationship until it becomes time to formally commit and enter into the membership. And it looks different depending on the type of the community. It could be that's the moment when you close on your house or on the land. It could be that's when you become a full member with full decision-making rights, even though you're still a renter. So it just sort of depends on the community. But in general, yeah, it's this process of deepening commitment until you tie the knot and get married. And then the real process begins of getting to live in community and all the ups and downs that that brings.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, here, let me just pull that up in the blog. So this is in the blog article of how to visit a community here, visiting communities. And I actually have, it's a list of questions for before you visit and during your visit. Yeah, and I think too, like Shelley was mentioning, like the third thing in community. I think we're all here like promoting community living. Obviously, we think it's a wonderful thing, but that doesn't mean it's always an easy thing. It's just something that at the end of the day, for myself, it's so worth it. It's worth the challenges and the drama and the difficult personalities at time. And it's worth, you know, the personal growth that you have to go through to find out how to be a healthy community member and be in healthy relationship. We don't learn this stuff in school. So it's a lot of unlearning and relearning and becoming something that's greater than any of us individually could be, and that's a community. So thank you all so much for your time and your questions today. Great to chat with you all.
Beautiful anecdote to wrap it on. Thank you so much, Cynthia. If anyone is inspired to join the Vermont Eco-Village tour, please come. I'm going and I would love to see you there. So final little nugget for that. I'm so excited.
Where
Yeah,
in
awesome.
Vermont is it?
We're gonna go all over the state. We're gonna start in Burlington and then kind of zigzag our way to Montpelier, and we're gonna go down to I think the furthest south we go is Jamaica, Vermont, with a new community there, and Cobb Hill, and then we're gonna go up to the Northeast Kingdom a little. It's a small state, so we can kind of do
I
that.
know. My first community experience was at Carme Cholang in Barnet.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, come on back. Come to
Please
Vermont if you
join.
feel inspired.
I've never been. But thank you, Cynthia, for joining us. Someone privately messaged me for the donation chat for NICA. I'll add it now, but there's a suggested donation for NICA, not required. But if you are interested in contributing to NICA financially, that helps support us. So I saw one hand. Is there another question before we
I'd be
end?
interested in chatting with folks, you know, for a few minutes if they want to network a little. There was some mention that we might do that.
Lovely. Well, I will end the recording now, and if you can hop off, everyone who needs to go can go, and we'll hang around. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.